Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud to be here. I'm indeed for 30 years in practice, as you can see from the color of my hair. 20 years only for the life sciences practice, only for companies in the pharmaceutical, diagnostics, medical device, and biotech field. And since 2016, me and my team of 6 people are working for the cannabis industry, in particular in Germany and in Europe, together with our colleagues in the cannabis practices in the US and in Canada, and just recently also in Southeast Asia. Take into consideration what happens in Thailand, I think we should be there as well. What I would like to do with you today is to discuss a little bit about the developments in the regulatory field in Germany and in Europe. And you know the difference between a UK or US speaker and a German speaker? The UK or US speaker starts with a joke, the German speaker starts with an agenda. And here we are. Just a couple of points that you know what you have to expect just now. And we start with the introduction. I think that's important. We have discussed this morning the regulatory framework, which is so heterogeneous. Heterogeneous not only within the European countries, but also heterogeneous within Germany. Even the different states within Germany are treating cannabis products differently, are interpreting the respective rules and regulations, the laws differently. And the only common ground which we have is the 1961 UN Single Convention, and of course the GACP and GMP rules. These apply for the whole industry. And you should, and I'm pretty sure you are aware of these rules and regulations, in particular, of course, the 1961 Single Convention, which should be your Bible anyway if you're on the business. And of course, GACP and GMP if you are cultivating. But did you know that with respect to harmonization, the European Parliament already in February 2019 filed a resolution with the European Commission to harmonize the respective rules and regulations for cultivating and selling and distributing cannabis products within the European Union? Who knew that? Can I just ask? And if you look into that, and let me take out my little device here. I love these devices. They are very helpful if you just would like to look something very quickly up. By the way, the last time I took out my phone doing a presentation, my little son had put a little toy into my pocket. I took that toy out, and it was a Bakugan. Do you know what a Bakugan is? Nobody? No little child? Bakugan is a piece of plastic which is very quickly put into a roll and is sold at a price of 15 to 35 euros for this little piece of plastic. Unbelievable profit margin. And why I'm saying that, if I'm going to read you now the respective provisions in that resolution, you may consider changing from the cannabis business into the Bakugan business. Because it has been celebrated by some of the trade press as this is the start of harmonization in Europe. Frankly speaking, it isn't. And let me just cite one of these wonderful points, 18 different issues. And number 14, I think, is one of the interesting ones. The European Parliament calls on the Commission to work with member states to ensure that safe and controlled cannabis used for medicinal purposes can only be in the form of cannabis-derived products that have gone through clinical trials, regulatory assessment, and approval. Oops. That would be the end of the extemporaneous mixtures in Germany. That would be the start of finished products. That would be the start of clinical trials. And the danger of clinical trials, everybody says, well, let's go through clinical trials. Those who have been in the industry, and I've been working in the pharmaceutical and diagnostics industry for many years, know how dangerous clinical trials can be. There's never a white or black. There's always a little gray. Sometimes a little bit more black, sometimes a little bit more white, but it's always gray. The results, the endpoints are difficult to reach, even for pharmaceutical products which have been developed for a long period of time. And for cannabis, this may be really a danger. Of course, we know Sativex has done that. GW has actually gone through the clinical trials. And you don't have to do that in the same extent as for an oncology product, for example. But on the other hand, if you reach your endpoints or not, is questionable and it's costly. So today, if you look into the reality in Germany, it is really heaven. In 2017, in March 2017, there was this liberalization of cannabis products for medicinal purposes. No clinical trials, no marketing approval has been necessary. And of course, also no price determination. Because in Germany, as in other European countries as well, products which have to be put newly on the market, pharmaceutical products, have to go through a price determination mechanism, which is the GBA, which is a committee which consists of representatives of the pharmaceutical industry, of the health insurance companies, who have, of course, an interest to discuss with you a very low price. All this has not been done for cannabis products. So since 2017, it was really heaven. And it is still, to a certain extent, heaven. If the European Commission is working more along the lines of that resolution, heaven may be not as long applicable here. And you may consider going into the Bakugan business instead, into the cannabis business, which is, to a certain extent, maybe more profitable. So we have to look into the developments of the European Commission very, very closely in order to influence it, in order to get it the harmonization. Well, harmonization is difficult to say because this morning we said there must be at least a kind of a mutual ground in each of the European countries to harmonize something. From my understanding, there is no real mutual ground. Every country is treating it differently, as we will see in a moment. If you look into and I've selected 4 countries here, the different countries, Portugal, Germany, Malta, and Italy, they are all actually on the forefront already with respect to how to treat medicinal cannabis. However, it's still different. As I said, Germany, for example, is treating these products, cannabis products, as a starting material for an extemporaneous mixture, which means in the pharmacies, a certain step has to be performed to that product in order to put it on the market. That is different from a ready-made pharmaceutical. A finished product just can be put on the market. It's on the shelf. You can take it out. And we will see how difficult a change from extemporaneous mixtures to a ready-made pharmaceutical will be, in particular, of course, with respect to obtaining marketing authorization and reimbursement. Let's have a look into the volumes of the imports of products, of cannabis products into Germany. And there are so many figures where if you look into different sources, how many tons have been imported from what kind of product, extracts, flowers. The question is, on which numbers can you really rely? Well, the numbers you will see right now in a minute are from the BfArM. They are granting, of course, the license and get the report back how much actually has been imported into Germany. And it is an interesting, growing market. So if you look into that here, the differentiation the BfArM is making is, of course, between the Sativex spray, as you know, and other forms. What is important to see is the cannabis flowers for medical purposes, which have increased significantly. In 2020, we have in Germany actually imported nearly 10 metric tons. And the number is increasing. With regard to the extracts, you should not be disturbed. We have not imported 61 tons of extracts. That is caused by a certain factor the BfArM is using to convert flowers into into the respective extracts. Very artificial. So the number is, from my point of view, not really helpful. But the number for the flowers imported for medical purposes is, I think, significant. And if you look into 2017, where we started actually in March, it has an increasing growth until 2020. Why I'm saying that? Well, there are, of course, now different ways for the importation into Germany. And those who have followed the respective trade press have seen that there was just recently an import of GACP flowers into the European market from Uruguay into Portugal, then GMP processed in a site in Portugal, and then exported into Germany. This morning we have heard that GACP is for onions only. To a certain extent, that's true or not true. GACP is definitely important. And we will see right now how GACP and GMP works together. And where is the gap or the overlap, which can be used, at least currently used, by the respective importers. And let's have a look into that here. Hopefully it's not too confusing. We have the Good Agricultural and Collection Practice, GACP, and then of course part 2 and part 1 of the GMP guide, which you probably are all aware of. What you can see here is this overlap between GACP and part 2, part 1 of the GMP guide, cutting and drying of plants, and so on. So what has happened is that the flowers in Uruguay have been cut, pre-dried under GACP rules, at least that was claimed, packaged, and sent to Portugal. The Portuguese authority, the Infamate, has granted the import permit. Then the flowers were processed on site under GMP rules, and then, of course, exported into Germany. The advantage, I think, is clear. If you do not have to cultivate flowers under GMP rules and regulations, but just can export GACP freshly cut flowers into the European Union, that is a significant advantage. We have, of course, asked the authorities whether they think that is a way into the future, and currently none of the authorities, probably they are anyway tied up with different problems, have that on their radar screen. They knew about it because it was really in the public domain. Everybody could read that in the trade press. And others are thinking about the same way, be it from South Africa, be it from other countries, where no GMP cultivators, GMP-approved cultivators. Why have this been done? You know, if you are not a member state of the European Union and your site has to be GMP certified, and if there is no mutual recognition agreement in place, then indeed an inspector from the German authorities has to fly over, has to inspect on site, has to see whether the cultivation and the processing of the plant is done according to EU GMP rules and regulations, and certifies that. And then the cultivator can export the plants into Germany. Before, it's not possible. And take into account the current travel restrictions under the pandemic rules, you know, we have a long list of cultivators in countries outside of the European Union who are in states who do not have a mutual recognition agreement and are waiting for, of course, the on-site inspection, which hopefully earlier or later will be possible again. So if you look into MRAs, mutual recognition agreements, you know, Australia, for example, has an MRA with the European Union, and Canada also has one. However, Canada has actually excluded cannabis products from that MRA. That's the reason why all cultivators in Canada who are currently exporting into Germany have had to have a EU GMP inspection by the respective authorities from that state in which the importer has its location, its seat. And this can differ of course, from state to state in Germany. We have companies which are located in Berlin, we have companies which are located in North Rhine-Westphalia, in Hesse, Thuringia, and all have different views on how to do that. At least they have to send over an inspector to do an on-site inspection. And that's really, at this point in time, the bottleneck. So cleverly, somebody has thought about that GACP, GMP issue. And actually, that was, frankly speaking, a not too bad idea. We will see how the European, in particular the German authorities, will react on that, if that will become a common practice. Very difficult to foresee. Currently, it's, as I said, not really on their radar screen. Trends. Let's look into what is going to happen in the future. What are the trends? We can, of course, always have a look into Canada. Canada is so far in front of us, so many years in front of Germany with respect to the development, the market. And of course, just one remark, if you look into 1961 Single Convention, it clearly says that countries who are liberalizing the use of cannabis for casual or for recreational purposes do not qualify under the 1961 Single Convention. Oops. And this was done in October 2019, if I'm not mistaken, in Canada. Canada, as you know, has actually liberalized the use of cannabis for recreational purposes. So does that mean that Canada is not longer qualifying as an exporter for medicinal cannabis into Germany? And that was a question which was raised by one of the parties in the parliament, and the government very cleverly answered. The cultivators in Canada very clearly distinguish between the cultivation of cannabis for recreational purposes and the cultivation for medicinal purposes. And as such, they are still qualified to export into Germany. Yeah, the question is, is that separation really been done? I've seen sites in Canada, personally, where really we had different indoor plantations where even different qualities have been cultivated. But if that always is the case, well, it might be also caused by political thoughts, because Canada was and is still one of the largest exporters of cannabis into the German market. So if they would have decided Canada doesn't longer qualify, the question is, where do we get the cannabis for our patients? And as such, this is you should bear that in mind. Into the future, we will see definitely more cultivators, in particular from European countries, from Portugal, from maybe Spain, definitely from Greece, who are exporting or who want to export cannabis products into the European market. And if we have then more and more companies cultivating and exporting from the European Union, the question is whether this question regarding Canada will be revisited or not. We should bear that in mind. The Canadians are very much aware of that. We'll see how this will work out. All right. Having said that, let's look into the trends. It is not a secret, and again, it's not a secret that the Ministry of Health in Germany is not really in favor of patients smoking flowers for the treatment of their disease. And it has, of course, also an impact on the prescription policy. Physicians are, to a certain extent, reluctant to prescribe cannabis which should be then smoked or can be smoked by their patients, because smoking, as we all know, is not really healthy. So currently there are lots of companies who are thinking about of new forms of applications. And it's not a secret that we have advised Canopy Growth on the acquisition of Storz & Bickel, which is one of the vaporizing companies with having a device for that purposes. But there are others as well who are looking into how can that now be done. The point is, if we have the definition of an extemporaneous mixture, you cannot sell any kind of capsules, gel capsules, which can be put into an inhaler or a vaporizer, because that is then already a ready-made pharmaceutical which is not approved by the German authorities. So you have to find a way, and companies are thinking about that, how can we still adhere to the necessity of a manufacturing step in the pharmacy to qualify our product as an extemporaneous mixture in the cannabis field. And there are some good ideas, which I cannot disclose, of course, but if you look into the internet, you will see lots of companies who are active in that field. And last but not least, take into consideration that in the future, and I can't tell you when the European Commission will actually take that resolution up and start actually developing European statutaries for the European member states, despite the fact that this will be a directive which needs then to be implemented in each and every EU member state. It will take years. I'm sure that from now on we at least have to look into 5 years or even longer before we will see any kind of implementation of a European law into the various member states. But companies are thinking about that. And they are thinking about developing ready-made pharmaceuticals, going through that hustle of clinical trials, going through that uncertainty whether their products will actually reach the endpoints in the clinical trials and will qualify as a product to be marketed, and receiving marketing authorization with it in the different ways which we saw this morning by our colleague from India, who has very nicely explained which different forms of marketing authorizations we have within the European Union. Having said that, if you look into the future, flowers will definitely remain on the market for a period of time, a longer period of time. There's no doubt about that. And even take into consideration that there will be, in one point in time, and probably the next speaker, Mr. von der Gruben, is going to explain when the first harvest in Germany will be put on the market. Everybody is keen to know that. Whether this has a significant impact is questionable. If you look into the needs and the imports of products, of flowers into the German market, and take into consideration the quantities which have been tendered out for the next 4 years by the BfArM, that is, I would say, maybe not a significant, but at least it's a market share, but maybe not a significant market share. We will see much more quantities to be imported from other European countries and from Canada. All right, so thank you very much. You may now consider going to the Bakugan business or remain with the cannabis field. And frankly speaking, I would still remain with the cannabis field. Thank you so much.